And welcome into Brainstorming America. Ken Rollins here, and along with John Merrill. Good morning, John.
Hey, Ken.
How you doing, buddy?
Great, friend.
Good to see you.
Good to see you always.
I've been watching you traveling the country here for the last few days, but I'm getting, and you have really, well, I'm just going into that because you're doing that with your mother, Mary.
Yes, sir.
How many people get to do that? I mean, she is what's her age?
81.
81.
Yes,
so
sir.
She's just a young chicken. But you got to take your mother to see some sights I've never got to see. And if I had went to see them, I would have seen the one major one and then come on back. But no, you saw everything.
Right.
You saw stuff that I'd never even heard about. I mean, well, I had heard about it.
Sure.
In the history books, but that's it. And
yes, sir.
It was just amazing to follow. I followed your adventures.
Well, I tell you what happened. Mother's Day, we were together at my sister's house in Montgomery, and I told Mother, I said, one of the things I want you to do, I said, I want you to think about 4 places in the continental United States that you'd like to go. Places you've never been before, but you've always wanted to. And then I want you to let me know what they are. And I said, now I'm not going to guarantee you that we're going to do all 4. I'm not going to guarantee you we're going to do them in the order you give them to me. But I will guarantee you that we're going to get on it. And so she thought about it. And then about 3 weeks later, I saw her. I guess it was about the 1st of June. And she told me, she said, I'd like to go to Niagara Falls. I'd like to go to New England and drive around. I'd like to go to the Redwood Forest and see all the sequoias. And I'd like to go to the Grand Canyon. And I talked to Cindy and I talked to Karen, my assistant, and I said, you know, I think we can do 2 of these at the same time. I think we can do New England and Niagara at the same time. So that's what we did. And Cindy was able to go with us to Niagara, but she already had some commitments and obligations. But we were gone for about 9 days.
I know.
And it was a lot. And of course, one of the things I did on social media, I created a hashtag for the trip and called it hashtag Mary's Excellent Adventure 2023.
Yeah, it was like the sequel. But if you had asked her the thing, Niagara Falls, I might have thought of, but I thought of Grand Canyon would be the first place you want to go. So you are going to go there.
We hope to go there too. And the thing about doing Niagara, you could do New England if you did Niagara, if you planned it well. And so we were able to go to Niagara and spent basically 3 days there in Niagara Falls and Buffalo and the surrounding area, and then left there and went to Vermont and then New Hampshire and then Maine and then Rhode Island and Connecticut and Delaware and Massachusetts and back through New York and then to Pennsylvania, and of course ended up in Pennsylvania, and just had a tremendous experience that was once in a lifetime, and not just for Mother, but for me too.
Well, in your life, it's been, how many times have we seen somebody go over in a barrel or somebody do stunts that they want to just jump off in there and things like that? That has been a place of national news.
Well, one of the things I discovered there, Ken, was that 16 times it's been attempted, that people are aware of, that they try to go over the falls in a barrel or some type vehicle.
We mean attempted.
Well, that's the ones that's been reported.
That
so
did make it or
16
did make it?
times, and 11 of them have survived.
Wow.
Which was remarkable to me.
Absolutely.
I figured more than that would have perished in that attempt. But 16 times it's been attempted at some level. And one time it was in a Sea-Doo. That guy, it didn't work out.
I wouldn't think so. That's more than they're hitting the speed bumps in the apartment complex.
How could you be so foolish to try to do something like that? Then there was another incident where a brother and a sister were actually fishing with their dad up in Niagara, and the boat got away. And they were able to rescue the girl before they got to the falls, but the little boy they were not able to rescue. And when he got to the falls, he was ejected from the boat as it went over and shot out. And somebody that was in one of the boats, like you saw us traveling in when we were down in the fall area, just riding around and getting soaked, they saw him. They said, it looks like a child or somebody in a red shirt just came over the falls, and they found him, and he was okay.
Wow. That was my next question. I saw y'all with rain jackets on. I was wondering how you got wet.
Oh, it was.
You take boats at the foot of the falls.
My brother, look, they had us going all the way up to the falls. You had the mist coming around you. You had the water from the falls coming on you. It was like being in a bad rainstorm. It was tremendous. Of course, I had my glasses on, and so I was still able to see, but I was able to get a few good pictures of that particular environment, but it was really remarkable.
So was there anything about it that you had not, that you saw that you didn't?
Well, that was
see
the
before?
first time for me to go to Niagara, so that was a
Everything
unique
you saw
experience
was
for me
new,
too.
yeah.
I will say this, and for the viewers that may not have been before, we went to the Canadian side. We spent most all of our time on the Canadian side, and the Canadian falls are a lot prettier than the falls on the American side. On the American side, there's a lot more rocks and a lot more areas that are not navigable, but the falls on the Canadian side is the giant horseshoe that you see. It's really, really something special, and something that I think all Americans should try to take advantage of and to participate in as a family, so it's that kind of a memorable experience.
I agree, and I'd like to be one of them. You take me up there sometime?
I'd love to, brother. You could have gone with us if I'd known you wanted to go this time.
I didn't.
And thank you so much for asking me about that. And we'll look forward to talking more about those travels and other events and activity that are important to you. And we're excited to be with you again this week.
And welcome back to Brainstorming America. We're here with John Merrill. Before we get started on that, can I get the control room to pull up that letter back there? Something very significant happened while you were up there in Niagara. I was down in Montgomery, and our governor, Ivy, has reappointed me to 4 more years on the State Board of Veterans Affairs. And that's in the letter up there. If you can't read it, that's what it says. And I've already got 19 years. This is 2027 average span. I don't even buy green bananas.
But let me say this, the reappointment that took place is a validation of the service that you provided to the people of the state of Alabama for the last 19 years in this role, and for decades prior to that in many other significant roles. And the benefit to the people of Alabama for your continued service is one that will be realized for decades to come.
Well, the one thing I got, we got 140,000 veterans in Alabama. When I go down 21, I'm so tired and followed all them log trucks and school buses. I think about somewhere in Alabama, there's no veteran down there that's just on his last leg, or he's in a nursing home. And he's depending on somebody to do the business on his behalf. That's where I come in the picture. And shame on me if I don't do it. So I keep on making that trip based on that. That's what's done every year. I get thinking, why am I doing this? And because it's a stressful thing to sit there and go through two-hour meetings, and I go down there and I come back in the dark. And so anyhow, with that said, I get a lot more out of the job than I put in it. But I'm not a chair occupier. If they was going back over the minutes a while back, the veteran home in Pell City, Ken Rollins. The cemetery down in Fairhope, Ken Rollins. We had a place, John, and you would jump on this. When a hurricane hit, the people in there, we got a home in Bay Minette, right there on the coast. We had to move the people out and transfer in 90-something-year-old people up at I-65 to Birmingham. We lost one. Well, when I found out about that, I said, why don't we just leave them there? They said we had no power. I said, well, in the Army, I ran 60 kW generators. We go all night. Well, ours, we only got one.
Oh.
I said, well, we're going to do something about that. I said, how do we get another one? And I said, they said, you're talking in the millions. I said, that's what I'm talking. Our lawyer was sitting there, Sandy Speakman, and I asked Sandy, how can we do this? She said, well, you'll have to get a bid and whatever, and it'd be $105,000. I said, I make a motion, we go ahead. Made a motion. We put it out, let it out for a contract. Cost millions of dollars, but when the tornado hit years later up in Huntsville, all the firemen, all the police around there were coming to the veterans home. We had the only power in the area. And I was so proud of that because, but my point is, I've done things down there that'll go on for years.
Yes, sir.
I had the opportunity to do that, and shame on me if I didn't.
That's right.
So I'm proud of it. I'm proud of that.
That's right. And that's the hashtag Ken Rollins way. And that's not just a street name.
Yeah, you don't think that ain't, when I send out to the people in Birmingham where the Centennial Park is, come on down to Ken Rollins Way, signed Ken Rollins.
That's right. That's great. That's great.
Something else. Anyhow.
But I'll tell you this, you made a point then without attempting to make it that I think is so important about the generators and why it's a significant investment. Too many times I think our people look at things that are introduced for the cost and they don't understand the difference between an ounce of prevention is worth a pound to cure. And when you look at what could be alleviated just by making that significant investment on the front end, how much money could be saved, how many lives could be saved, it's really almost always worth the investment to do it on the front end. I remember we built a activity center / storm shelter in Tuscaloosa about 20-something years ago, and one of the questions that I asked when they had the public meeting, the community meeting, this is before I was ever in the legislature, let alone Secretary of State, was what is the concern about how you should be preparing this facility for a storm shelter use with generators? And they're like, well, that's not in the budget. And I'm like, well, it's not in the budget. I said, the building doesn't even exist right now. It's just blueprints. We can change it and it will benefit so many more people. Well, about 8 years after that is when the tornado came through and really changed the dynamics of that entire area. And if they had not done that, I hate to think of where they would have been, but you have to have people that continuously ask those questions just like you did then.
I was using why not be proactive rather than reactive? And Bob Riley did that during the hurricane. He got a lot of money through FEMA for the state of Alabama because of Mobile down it. And he took that money and he used it to ramp up on boats, things that you'd need in a storm for transporting various things. He took advantage for the next one. He had this money sitting over there because I was trying to get it for the veterans home.
Sure, of course you were.
I went over to get it.
That's right.
He said, you know I got this, don't you? I said, yes, sir. That's why we come over here. He says, you ain't getting it. You ain't getting it. Just exactly what he said. He said, I know how much you got. And he did, by the Veterans Assistance Fund.
That's
we
right.
had $50 million. So he said, you're not getting mine. I ain't going to take yours, but you use yours to do what you're asking me to do.
Well, one of the things that Governor Riley knew how to do was to take advantage of the resources he had. We're glad you're spending some of your resources with us today. We'll see you in a minute.
Welcome back to Brainstorming America, Ken Rollins. I'm here with John Merrill. And John, one of the things, keeping track to the folks out there, what we're trying to do is take issues around the country, break them down to where it's understandable for. A lot of times the news don't go in depth and explain. They'll tell you something happened, but they won't tell you how it happened, why it happened. So I want to do that on it. And I noticed one of the things that I don't know what's going to become of it, but our elderly population in the legislature, McConnell had a stroke on TV the other day, froze up. Did you see that?
I did.
Now
Now, let's be clear, that was not defined as a stroke, but it appeared
Well,
to be
Dr.
stroke-like
Rollins-
symptoms.
Dr. Rollins says
Stroke-like symptoms.
he froze.
Right.
And Senator Feinstein fell this morning.
Yes, she did.
And then we got...
And she's the oldest member in Congress of the United States Senate or the House.
had nothing to do with age, but Fetterman, he might as well be 150 because he can't even find out what he's supposed to... And comes in with shorts and a hoodie. I mean, where are we going? Anyhow, the age limit, is there something, should it be an age limit?
Well, I don't know. There was a story this morning on the radio about age limits and the presidency, and they were talking about President Biden and about how his behavioral patterns and the activities that he's been involved in that have been well documented that have not been flattering to him.
Yep.
Whether it was falling over on the bicycle or whether it was falling on the stage at the United States Air Force Academy or wherever it happened to be. Those were not flattering events that occurred. But, you know, you have actually watched President Biden's
Decline.
on TV.
Yeah.
You have watched it from
Real
the time he
time.
was vice president, and then the 4 years that he was gone, then he comes back as president, and he's having a hard time. And yet we both know people that are in their 90s that communicate just as well or better than we do when they're talking to people. But I think that it's important to make sure that as individuals, we're aware of what our personal limitations are. And a lot of times people are not willing to admit what those limitations are, and so they may ask people to support them for elective office, or they may ask them to support them for a continued appointment to a position. They may ask them to continue to give them leadership responsibilities that they're not prepared to embrace anymore.
You know, Mr. Waters, Nancy Waters and all those people that, anyhow, Mr. Waters is from Cleburne County, maybe, Clay County. Anyhow, he's been on my show when he's 99, 100, 101. He's been on here for a lot of time. He was in a war, but he's sharp as a tack. Gets around a lot better than I do. And then, how old was Senator Shelby?
Well, Senator Shelby was 88 years old on May the 6th.
Okay.
So on May the 6th of 2023, he turned 89.
Because last time I talked to him, he was in his 80s. And he's sharp as a tack.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He
And then
told-
I have a friend in Coleman named Roy Drinkard, who is a major developer in Coleman County, North Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, all across the South. He's 103 years old. And Cindy and I have spent the night at his home numerous times. And I remember one night when he was 101, we spent the night with him. And I remember when we were getting ready to go to bed, which was about 11:30 at night, he said, now, John, I may not be here in the morning when y'all get up because my plane leaves to go to Chattanooga at 5:30. And I just want you to know I've enjoyed having y'all. And I was thinking, Lord have mercy, I may not be turned over by that time, and he's already going to be up and gone.
That's what I'm talking about. There you go. Well, that's another subject I want to talk about. And it seems like every time we do a show, it's high on the list. But Mayorkas, I can't say it. Mayorkas, whatever. The head of the what is his title? He's Secretary of the Homeland Security.
Right.
And he testified last week, and he's still saying the border is secure. The border is secure. Now, us knowing something about politics, only thing I can figure is the Democrats want to let as many illegals in here as possible, because each one of those illegals at some point would become a Democrat vote. They'll vote Democratic. They even come in wearing Biden-Harris T-shirts. Some of the people crossing illegal. Do you have any other feeling as to what might be happening in that administration that would cause him to be that way, other than
Look, I think one of the problems that we have with the president's administration is that the president does not really have a plan. He responds to things that are introduced to him. But from the time that he has taken office, January the 20th, 2021, until today, there's no evidence that he came in with an established agenda about things that he wanted to accomplish and the things that he wanted to do to make a difference for our country. And that is always a problem, because one of the things that occurs when you're in political office, any elected official can tell you this: if you don't have a plan and you don't have an agenda and you don't have a goal about the things that you want to accomplish, things are going to continue to be presented to you and things are going to continue to happen. And so you have to respond and you have to make sure that you're addressing those things. But if you're not committed to advancing policies and procedures that are important to you, then those things will be absorbed by the surroundings, and so you'll just end up being responsive and reactive instead of proactive.
When he went into office, it seemed to me like they had a list to check off. Well, Trump had a problem to get the XL pipeline done, and then there was a lot of bragging about it once it was done. Well, let's take that off the list. First day. The next thing was the border. He got a lot of credit for the wall and all the stuff. Trump was synonymous with the border. So they took that right then. It's like everything that Trump has done, let's kill it.
Well, and of course, we're still paying the cost for the XL pipeline not being continued and advanced at the fuel pump each and every day.
Sure.
We see that, and that's been a concern that we've all seen and we continue to see throughout the Biden administration. And it's something that the people can give attention to, and only the people can give attention to. And we're glad that the people have joined us again this week and allowed us to share with you some thoughts about things that are important to us. Also appreciate the personal indulgence about my recent trip with my mom. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next week on Brainstorming America.